All right, welcome guys. For some reason you've turned up to a session entitled A Year in the Life of the Common Domain Model. That probably says more about how exciting your lives are than mine. So please try and stay awake. For those of you who don't know me, I'm David Shone. I'm Senior Director at ISDA for Data and Digital Solutions. So my team look after our technology input to the Common Domain Model, the Digital Regulatory Reporting Solution, and our FPML data standard. I currently have the honor of also being chair of the CDM Steering Working Group, a position I've held for the last 2 years, mainly due to lack of other volunteers. I genuinely didn't think this presentation would be accepted, so last week, in the midst of illness, I sat down and tried to work out what on earth I was going to talk about for half an hour with any sort of level of intrigue. What I came up with worked in my drug-addled state. This is an opportunity to find out whether it works in real life or not, right? So if it's not as funny as I thought it was in my head, I apologize. My job really is to repeat and summarize what everybody else is going to say about CDM today, okay? So Gab's already taken some of my thunder. How dare he at his own conference. Vernon's already spoken about his world. We've got a number of detailed conversations over the track today. I'm going to try and summarize that as well as everything we've achieved in the last year. And I thought, what is this talk like? It's a bit like being Michael Aspel, right? Doing a, this is your life chat. And then I thought, that might be a bit UK-centric. There might be people in this room who have no idea who that is. So I thought, okay, I wonder if there was an American version. Turns out there was. This guy is the last person who presented that in 1961. Anybody know who that is? Apparently it's Ralph Edwards. So I decided that analogy wasn't going to work. Parallel to the excitement of CDM, I'm also started to go through wedding planning. So I thought, actually, it reminds me a bit of doing a groom's speech. I'm going to spend a lot of time thanking lots of people for all the things they've done to contribute to the thing that I'm taking some credit for, right? So I thought I'd structured this speech or this half hour roughly in that groom's speech format. I feel like I'm duty bound. That's from Bride Book. There are other apps and websites that will teach you how to ruin your life in the way with the best etiquette. So don't worry about that. So we are gathered here today to celebrate CDM. I thought I'd put this up. Look, I hope you all know what the Common Domain Model is by now. It is a standardized, machine-readable, and executable model representing financial products, trades, and the life cycle of those events. It's funny how many times I still hear people call it the Common Data Model or so on. But, I want to make sure that we are talking about the same thing. The other week, I'm not a sports person. Okay. I was with my children and they were playing football for their teens. So that's soccer for some of you. And I heard one of them shout at somebody else, "Hey, stupid, you're CDM, man, you're CDM. Get back in the middle." I thought, oh dear, have I been swearing at home about CDM so much they're now using it as an insult? Turns out CDM means centered defending midfielder or something like that. But I thought CDM had literally become that ubiquitous in my household. Luckily, it's not. But this is what we're going to talk about today, so there's a little segue. Vernon has already talked you through the 6 main dimensions there on the right-hand side. If you are trying to standardize your financial product in any of those 6 dimensions, CDM is the tool for you. So this is why we're here today. I'd like to say thank you to the wedding party. Okay. So ISDA started this. And we were quickly joined by ICMA, so we've just heard from Tom. ISLA unfortunately can't be here today. I started my journey with CDM 5 years ago with ISLA. And actually, I have to say, it was the first speech I did in New York at this event was in this building. And while apparently CDM is one of the biggest FINOS projects, I feel like the room I got to speak in last time had more windows, a bit bigger. I don't know if it's mixed messages. We, of course, have Trade Header and Regnosis as our technology partners who are also maintainers of the CDM. And since I'm supposed to talk about the last year, we had a new bridesmaid join us as part of the wedding party. So JP Morgan joined us as the first financial institution as a maintainer of the CDM, which is a major milestone in the evolution of the model. It's not just your friendly trade associations, but it's also your large financial institutions getting on board. If you too want to be a bridesmaid, speak to us after. Come on. I want to say thank you to the family. So the family is really the working group chairs. This, well, it's not that complicated diagram, shows you the world according to CDM. We have the steering group at the top, as I mentioned at the minute. I chair that, setting the direction, looking at roadmaps, discussing the finer points of governance to tedium. But then you have the engines, the engine rooms underneath that. So the contribution review working group is where most of the actual release, approval, hard work goes into ensuring that what ends up in the model is something usable and everybody wants. We have the technology architecture working group for those of the community who are smarter than me and understand things like language distributions and serialization and so on. And it's another core group of what I call the 3 senior working groups there. So we have Chris currently chairing that, and the CRWG is rotated monthly. And then where does the work happen? The work happens in the domain working groups at the bottom. Now, some of those are under the FINOS, governance and infrastructure. Others sit within our trade association worlds. But ultimately, anything that comes out of those groups that has to go into the CDM goes through the top 3 senior groups. So Vernon's mentioned collateral. We have a derivatives working group. We have our legal agreement working group. We have a number of working groups associated with DRR. And then we have ISLA and we have ICMA with their own working groups looking at things that go into CDM. Our family has grown over the year. Okay, so, I mean, I don't want to stretch the metaphor too much, but, and say something like we had a couple of new births, but we did have 2 new working groups added in the past year. So we've had the Tokenized Assets Working Group chaired by Kieran McGonigal of Tokenizate, and you will be hearing from Tokenizate more throughout the day, I'm sure. And we also have the Physical Risk Working Group focused on things like physical risk swaps and flood risk, chaired by Johnny Mattimore. So we've had 2 new working groups in that time. Not bad for a year. Well. Okay. I think I also mixed metaphors last Wednesday, so I seem to have been giving ourselves a little badge, a little medal, every time we've done something. So if you could keep counting those medals and tell me how many medals I've awarded at the end, that'd be awesome. Just another way of keeping you interested. As you can see, I've no expense spared on the quality of the medal. So yeah, just keep track of those for me. So it's not traditional for the groom to go into the bride's prior history. It's more the best man's job. But I just wanted to give a brief history of CDM up until last year. This one, we couldn't fit all of that on one slide. So this is up to Q4 2023. Most of you have probably seen that before. CDM stretches all the way back to a thought concept way back in 2016. You'll see that momentum grew over the years. with the institution of the MOU between the three associations, with the migration of CDM to FINOS in February 2023, and ongoing contributions to various pieces of the CDM. In 2024, we published some Get Started guides. We had for MEG announced their production use case. We had some firms go live for the EMEA refit JFSA. We had a completed successful POC with JSCC. And we had the Linux Foundation launch some training modules for CDM. So this is the state of the world, say, at this event last year, okay? We were in incubating status, up in the top right there. That lovely sort of mustard yellow shade that basically says, please make me active, otherwise you're gonna make me sick. We had 2 firms live with 1 actively in development at this point for our digital regulatory reporting. We had 1 firm live with 1 production ready in the collateral world. And we had 1 firm engaged in pre-production with banks on the post-trade processing side. From a governance perspective, we had the working group structure in place, and we had a steering group governance that we more or less had agreed by early 2024. So there's a couple of public press releases there. I haven't checked with anyone whether I can use their logos. If you've put it into the public domain, it's going on the slide. Okay. I was supposed to say thank you to the staff, which felt a bit condescending, so I crossed that out and decided to talk about the governing team instead. So that's the maintainers plus FINOS. So we have enhanced governance in the past year. We came up with a target operating model. So all of this is published on the website. I'm not going to step through these in detail. But that kind of psychedelic color matrix thing there is a target operating model, which we hadn't had until that point. We also had an adoption strategy published with an initial focus on better sharing between us of adoption targets, use cases, collaboration, and so on. 2025, believe it or not, was the first year to have a public roadmap published at the beginning of the year with all of the product enhancements we plan to put on there. And also we, as trade associations, co-funded Regnosis to formally manage releases and improve the day-to-day governance of the release process within the working groups. So hopefully you'll be able to see in the past year we have tightened up some of the governance, and this is one of the reasons we're headed towards, or have been able to achieve, active status. And I've awarded ourselves a bunch of medals too. But now this is why you're all here, for me to say thank you to the guests, the CDM community. That's you. So we had pretty much immediately after this event last year, JP Morgan went live with ASIC and MAS with the digital regulatory reporting tool. We had ARC51 announce their production use case for IM and VM CSAs. And again, Paul will be talking later today about their work. And we also had more getting started guidelines published. In April, JP Morgan became that bridesmaid that I talked about earlier, the first financial institution to be a maintainer. In May, we had DTCC announce their intentions to integrate CDM and DRI into their GTR for MiFID. We also decommissioned an extension called ISDA Foundations, ensuring that all of the CSA and legal model was fully available in the open source model available through FINOS. We completed Canada and ICMA jurisdictions in July and September for our DRR extension. And then there's more jurisdictions in the future. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So we, again, have achieved quite a bit in the past year. And if it's public, it's going on the slide, right? So the next few slides might feel a bit like a newsreel, so I apologize for that. I didn't have a chance to make it look pretty either. Maybe I'll use an AI tool next year. So there's a couple of headlines. Oh, a medal. Let's talk about the DRR avalanche. So as I said, after JP Morgan, we saw JSCC go live. We've had Pictet step out of the shadows and do a webinar with JP Morgan. We had the extension to MiFID and MiFIR announced by DTCC, as I just mentioned. This all comes as we have completed 8 now jurisdictions from an ISDA DRR perspective, with the last one there being Hong Kong. We now have 4 firms live with DRR. In 2025, we have seen 16 firms engage in POCs, and we expect more live announcements expected over the coming months. When I brought on some contractors beginning of the year to help with proof of concepts with our members, I thought we might have 5. Those poor contractors have been doing 3 times as much work as I expected them to do, for the same wage, I will say. So come to me if you want to get your contractors working hard. No, it's been an absolutely fantastic take-up, beyond certainly my expectations, and it's only growing. And because of this, we're seeing more and more demand, and we will continue with our promise to deliver SEC, SFTR, and MiFID between the associations, certainly by the middle of 2027. So that's not just ISDA. I expect also ISLA and ICMA to be working with us on SFTR. Oh, a medal. On the collateral side, we've seen, so this is a pipeline. I wasn't paying attention, Vernon, so I don't know if you put this up on the last one. We've got 12 firms in that pipeline in total, okay? But what we've actually seen, I'll just talk about that. We did the startup guides, and we held 3 training sessions across New York and London over the past year as well. But what we've seen is that collateral, the use case, has actually been the gateway to AI and sec finance. So as I mentioned, ARC 51 adopted CDM for CSA data extraction. We also had firm in the sec finance world called Trading Apps, right? I think have been bought now, actually. I'm going to say they were bought because they use CDM. Why not? Let's just say that. Who started to use CDM for matching in the securities finance space. And all of this is coming directly from the collateral use cases that Vernon has just been talking about, okay? So think beyond what can you do now. Pick a use case. Do that now, but think, what might this lead me to, I guess, is the message from that. Oh, a medal. Oh. That was 3 medals for those who keep them count. We've seen the AI groups within the FINOS community starting to bring innovation to this world as well. So FINOS run tech sprints. I'm sure if you want more information, then Luca or any of the other FINOS representatives could give you information on how to join those. I think we have David Lee from ISDA here somewhere. Well, I don't know if he's in the room, or there he is at the back. Again, if you pop by the CDM info booth just outside, then I'm sure he can point you in the direction of AI, the AI groups as well. But we've seen initiatives coming out of this. We ourselves publish papers on AI strategy, on using AI to represent CSAs in CDM. There we go. I thought I'd mention it. We have seen recent white papers looking at LMM application for structured transformation within financial contracts from the community, and we've also seen members of the community generate huge amounts of test data. Apologies, guys, that upsets you. It wouldn't be remiss of me to not mention our technical partners who've been with us for the longest on this journey. So we have TradeHeader and we have Regnosis, who've continued to underpin a lot of the work that certainly ISDA has done, but also have been running webinars, running FAQ, blogs, running training, actually building training for FINOS and so on. If you see Mark, Leo, Lionel, any of them today, then please talk to them about your CDM needs as well. We couldn't have done it without them. I awarded just one big medal between you, sorry. So we've also seen the rise of tokenization, okay? You have to be in a very specific position for this clicker, sorry. Tokenization released a paper on making the CDM more operational. I say it like that because I cannot pronounce that word. We also saw Matt Vickers, the MP for Stockton, which is a place in the northeast of England. It's sad that I know that, frankly, but he chairs the parliamentary group for blockchain. And in one of his blogs, he actually called out and endorsed CDM as a standard to be used in the future of digital assets within the UK, which I think is the first time I've seen any government organisation endorse the CDM. And we didn't even have to pay him, or at least ISDA didn't. I don't know if anybody else did. But we have seen this rise of tokenization. That's his little quote there. So to make the vision a reality, we need tools that bring everything together, not just tech for the sake of it. Excellent to see that sort of recognition make it to the global stage, or at least the national stage in the UK in the past year. As a groom, I'm supposed to compliment the bride, who I guess in this metaphor is the CDM. So we've done many other things, right? We had multiple events, including the showcase, which was another success. Look out soon for announcements. I actually says February there. I got confirmation today. It's going to be the 4th of March, 2026 in London for the next CDM showcase. There have been other improvements to the governance. From an adoption acceleration point of view, we've seen work put into changing how reference data is managed within the CDM. Mark and the trade head of the team have done a fantastic job there of refactoring that. We've had Regnosis working through Translate 2.0, which has essentially made it the translation layer so that you can take your data models and map them into CDM, fully open source and available for use. I've mentioned foundations, I've mentioned DRR. We had the phase 1 of the serialization project delivered, essentially looking at versioning when you serialize in and out. The next steps will be forward and backward compatibility. We've seen improvements to testing, CSA test packs. We've seen more CSA legacy clauses. We are about to release some work on umbrella agreements. And we are also in negotiation with some service providers to look at Python generator improvements and some potential around AI assistance for documentation, which I'm still hopeful those will kick off before the end of the year. So there's quite a bit there, I think. But finally, I'd like to mention the new CDM Smart Contract Task Force. There was a press release a few hours ago from ISDA and Tokenization. So we've seen with increased adoption that firms are now looking beyond DRR and some of those initial use cases into post-trade event automation. And more specifically, how do they go about implementing smart contracts using CDM, which I think was probably always the ideal end state. So we are kicking off a task force to look at taking initially interest rate resets, taking the workflow and functions that exist in CDM, but actually turning that into a standard implementation, a standard implementation library. So again, Tokenization are talking later today. If you see them or if you want to ask more about that, come and see me or the group. But that press release went out today. It has a lovely link so you can sign up and make sure you're part of those working groups. I guess I'm looking forward to the honeymoon. I had hoped to have a roadmap, but I have not been organized enough in the last month to finalize a roadmap within the steering group. However, there are some highlights. I expect to see the later phases of serialization next year, so forward and backward compatibility between versions. I expect to see more tech debt taken out of the equation with the harmonization of timestamps, improved regression test data, further governance improvements. Let's move further towards that, Tom. I'd like to expand some of the release management principles we've got across the working groups as the community grows. As I've mentioned, we're going to be expanding our DRR jurisdictions, and hopefully there's further documentation work as well in there. No doubt, during the course of the year, there will be lots and lots of AI. And as with all these things, a whole bunch of things I don't foresee. A lot of the things I've spoken about today, I could not have foreseen. Do not come to me for your palm reading or anything like that, because I will not be any good at it, okay? So I want to reiterate what Gab said today. We have now made it to active status, which is a major milestone on our FINOS journey. I hope you've seen that collaboration has been core, right? Whether you're part of the wedding party, whether you're part of the staff, whether you're part of the guests, couldn't have done it without all of you. So I want to thank you all for that. I don't have any flowers, but if you want to go out there, there's some lovely CDM badges that you can stick to your hardware or your children or whatever it is you want to do. So I'm just going to leave you now. If you look at your dominant hand, please, and imagine it has a glass of something fizzy or not fizzy. And please join me in an imaginary toast to another successful year in the CDM ahead. Cheers, everyone. I guess there's 2 minutes for questions if you really want to ask me. Oh, you do? Okay, sorry. Thank you, David. Yeah. Yep. No. No. So, well spotted. No. So there's a mixture, right? So some of those firms are across multiple jurisdictions. Some of them have multiple asset classes on the same jurisdiction. It goes without saying that those firms ultimately want all of the relevant jurisdictions. Because the other thing is, not all jurisdictions are relevant to all of them, right? But they will. The idea is that they will expand to all of their relevant jurisdictions. Yes. 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 Okay, there we go. Actually, yeah, if you pop by after, we've got people who know the firms and exactly what they're live with in more detail than I do. Our solutions adoption team, in fact, are sat here. Go revise, Natalia, yeah? Yeah. Sorry, is there another question there? Wow. I feel like someone stacked the deck against me here. Look, eligibility has been on the steering group agenda for DRR for a while. It always gets pushed down beyond regimes. So they will always add regimes and asset classes first, but it remains on the list. And I'm going to leave it at that. I cannot see eligibility being part of the honeymoon suite next year, if that's my personal take, but there we go. Any other loaded questions? All right, thank you guys. Thanks for listening to me.